I'm joined now by Sourabh Gupta. He's a senior fellow at the Institute for China-America Studies. Sourabh, quite some developments there that Nathan just let us in on. I want to get your thoughts on what you're hearing and what you just heard so far in this phone call that's lasted for a little more than half hour, 45 minutes so far.
No, I think the two sides are just trying to come onto a common platform where they can have a productive conversation. The two countries have very different approaches in how they are reaching out in terms of their relationship with each other. And there is a gap between these two approaches. And I think just having the heads of state speak to each other allows them perhaps to bridge that gap and speak and arrive at a common platform on which they can then transact productively.
We know that there was a lot of anticipation leading up to this phone call. There was a lot of behind-the-scenes works, discussions leading up to it. Talk about the timing of this. Why now? And some view this as positive that the meeting is even taking place, but some also feel it should have happened much earlier. As we've heard and spoken about the last few days, these two leaders know each other. They've met many times over the past several years. So really, how significant is this conversation?
Well, the conversation is very, very significant. Yes, it's good if it had happened earlier, but it is very significant. Significant is simply because U.S.-China ties were in a terrible state when the Biden administration came into office. And it takes time to repair. Anyone needs to do the political things right at both ends to ensure that you don't lose face going in too early or you are not well prepared going into the meeting. It's very useful. The timing is very interesting, I feel, simply because the Chinese side was a little fearful that it could get played politically by the American side. You know, the Americans were saying, let's cooperate on issue areas and we will compete on other issue areas. And climate was obviously a key area for cooperation. And I think there was a fear at the Chinese end that the U.S. would accrue the fruits, the gains on climate, and thereafter the U.S. would pivot away to a hard line with regard to China, and China would be left standing. So I think the Chinese side has kind of dragged this out a little longer. Glasgow is over. They've had some important agreements at Glasgow, and now is the time to take it to the next level forward. And I think the Chinese are saying, okay, now let's try to see if we can build those guardrails in the relationship.
Both sides seem to be putting out information, trying to manage expectations, so it's likely we won't see any kind of joint statements or any kind of concrete deliverables from this meeting. But what do you think can come out of this? Do you think we could see any movement on tariffs, which we've been talking about now for months, and on the person-to-person level, a lot of folks in both countries really want the visa issue to be resolved?
On tariffs, no, I don't think that's going to be an issue that's going to be solved. It's also too specific an issue on the U.S. The Biden administration doesn't have its story right yet on the tariff issues. It's still caught up in politics. There will be a conversation, perhaps, though, on the industrial subsidies issue, where there's a much broader consensus within the Biden administration on level playing field considerations, which it wants to put to the Chinese side. But I think the area where there will be a fundamental conversation on is with regard to Taiwan. There has been a lot of I would say, tomfoolery on the one China policy at the U.S. side, even though the U.S. side has come to the decision after an internal review that it is going to stick structurally with the one China policy. China wants to have comfort in this regard. And part of the nuclear buildup that China is going through at this point of time relates to things like Taiwan scenarios. And the U.S. in that case also wants to know that, hey, are we going to have stable strategic deterrence? And is there not too much of arms and gamesmanship? You know, we've had AUKUS, we have nuclear buildup, we have Taiwan. These can all become very incendiary in a very short period of time. And I think both leaders will speak to each other, trying to reassure themselves on these questions so that the larger geostrategic balance in Asia can be better maintained going forward.
And to that point, it has been said that part of this conversation is happening to possibly prevent any misunderstandings in that sphere. Do you think this really could reduce tensions? And what are you hoping to see out of this? And what will you be watching for here?
I am watching for broad understandings. I'm not looking for specific deliverables. What I'm trying to gauge out here is, the United States has come in with the viewpoint for this whole past year that we cooperate with China and we compete with China and let the chips fall as they may in that context. China says it's no problem to have uh, good, fair, strong competition, but that competition must be kept within guardrails because otherwise, without guardrails, that competition can really degenerate into conflict very, very soon and can become uncontrollable. So, and here is where the two presidents with these two different approaches can find a central meeting ground, as it were. And I'm going to try to look in the statements that come out to suggest that the US has kind of moved away from its ad hoc approach in dealing with China. And China has moved also someplace towards the US in saying, we feel that guardrails are being provided to this relationship, and we would like to take cooperation on specific issue areas one step further. That's the sort of arrangements, that's the sort of narrative coming out of this meeting that I'll be looking for.
All right, we're almost an hour in. Sourabh Gupta, great to get your take. We hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Elaine. See you.